Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Veterans Office is going to implement programs through the different American Legion chapters and the VFWs just as a program of education on the hepatitis C issue for the Vietnam-era veterans. So I will be handing out more information next month as they get this program rolling forward. It's more of an educational program, free testing and things like that.
All right, thank you. County Manager Wayne Taylor's excused. Board of Elections, Sue Montgomery.
Good morning. I'm joined this morning by Shauna Doyle, who is the Republican deputy, and Jen Fifield, who is the Democratic deputy. And the one thing we wanted to do, I know that our annual report was circulated with all of you. We were hoping that you could do a resolution accepting the report and placing it on file. We're also here to answer any questions you might have about the report or anything else.
Yes, questions? Second. Sean. Questions, concerns? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thanks so much.
I have a question.
Great.
Question.
Oh, questions? Okay. Sorry about that.
Sue, I know there was a couple of bills that were in this year. I don't know what happened to them in regards to making it less cumbersome for voter registration. Has any of that taken place?
It's been a while since I've looked at that. I know that there were a couple out there. I will check on that and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Great.
All set, thank you.
Thanks.
District Attorney, Mr. Craig.
Just real quick, Linda did tell me that she did speak to you already about our ECHO and movements that we've been, and great meetings that we've been having. And I did invite some individuals from the communities, and I've had other people ask me if they're able to attend. And they are open meetings, so if anybody in your community is interested in coming, just have them give myself or Linda a call, and they're more than welcome to sit in on the meetings. We are also, as part of our animal cruelty training, 911 has asked that the dispatchers be trained in regards to responding and how to handle calls that come in. So we'll be doing that training, I believe, the end of May and early June. So, but other than that, things are going great. I'm very busy, but most of my cases are in the paper, so there's not much I can really discuss out here in public unless anybody has any questions they'd like to ask.
Anybody? We're all set, thank you.
Thank you.
Emergency Services, Don Jaquith, he's excused. Emergency Medical, Patty Bradshaw. Sheriff's Office, Richard Cunningham.
I think I've got three resolutions. The first is looking for approval to hire a summer intern, high school kid to work for probably part-time for maybe the 2 months of the summer.
Okay. By Mr. Monty, second by Sean. Questions, concerns?
Just what exactly are they going to do, Richard?
It'd pretty much be a gopher, maybe, wash cars, filing, minimal stuff, no contact with inmates.
Is that budgeted?
He has money in his budget for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Monty.
Richard, I know this has nothing really to do with this, but in fact it kind of does. You're having quite an issue with turnover again, aren't you, down there?
Yes, we are.
You lost 3 recently?
4.
4. Yeah.
Summertime. The summertime, they make more money to install docks and work at the marinas.
I understand. Has your list been exhausted?
Yes. list is exhausted. The last two that we interviewed were off the street. The next test will probably be next spring. So I'll work these people for over a year before we find out if they can be made permanent off the list.
Right.
But
I think it's something we need to address fairly soon.
Mr. Scott?
So, I didn't realize you had that many open. A couple questions. The year away before the next test, so we would go out, we hire new deputies, obviously you have to do that.
Correction officers.
You need them, correction officers, and then if they don't score in the top three,
we have to let them go.
you gotta let them go after we've invested all that money into training and everything else.
Yes, you do.
We can't order a test prior to,
We have ordered the test, but I believe it's a statewide test. I believe the next scheduled date is next April.
so the reason that so many are leaving obviously must be due to wages.
Yeah, three were wages.
So where do we compare with other counties in regards to starting correction officers or any correction officers?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I'm sure the Sheriff's Association has salary surveys that I can access, but like I said, one is installing docks now, one is working for a marina, and one was an aircraft mechanic, and there was nothing open in the field. He did receive a good job offer, and you can't hold that against him.
No.
He's a trained aircraft mechanic.
But it certainly is something that we're going to have to address. Where are we with the union thing with the Sheriff's Department? Are we doing anything there at this point?
Well, we are. I mean, we're in discussions with them now. They had asked to meet with me, but they haven't set a date. They're going through some changes with their LS representatives, so I don't know whether that's holding up. Now we have two units to negotiate, and both of them are going to be the
Right.
same year here, so.
Mr. Gillen?
Yeah, Sheriff, when the chairman and I toured it, in some of the discussions we had, there was an issue about psychological testing being brought up for COs, et cetera,
Yes.
coming in.
I would
Can you
very much
expand
like
upon
to-
that?
I would like to make that a part of the hiring process. We've had issues in the past, and you know, with medical confidentiality, there are issues. I had given some information to purchasing, and the last I knew, they said it had to be approved by the county attorney before we can make that a part of the hiring process.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. What do we vote on? Seasonal. No, the
Seasonal.
Bill, delay the vote.
Did you vote for it or against it?
I didn't vote. I'm not on the committee.
Okay, the next two are, don't have any budget impact. 1984, President Ronald Reagan signed Proclamation 5187, creating National Correction Officers Week, being the first week of May every year. In 2016, our facility handles 670 bookings. And as you know, nobody makes it to a state prison unless they come to a county jail first. And we get everything from traffic offenses up the ladder to homicides, drug dealers, weapon runners. We're dealing with a high percentage of federal inmates right now. We have a very dedicated, very professional staff. We do our own in-house training. Inmates are a very litigious group, which you can see in the newspapers. They love to claim their toes have been stepped on and sue. The county attorney can attest to the fact that we have very minimal inmate actions against our facility and our officers. I'd like to ask for a resolution of appreciation for my staff up there for the job they do day in and day out, keeping it quiet, no injuries. They're dealing with mental health, with medical issues, with you name it. They get it off the street, they handle it.
Okay, moved by Mr. Monti, second by Mr. Miga. Questions, concerns? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
And the third one is in the same vein. 1962, President Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as Police Memorial Day. And I'd just like to request that the board acknowledge that and have flags lowered to half-mast on Police Week, especially May 15th. I know I'm forgetting names, but just locally here for the sheriff's office, we had Officer Earl Torrance killed in this jail over here in the 40s. We lost Sergeant Eric Loisel to a traffic accident. We've also had Trooper Gleason and Trooper Donahue as local New York State Police killed in the line of duty. I'd just like to see some recognition to that. And
Moved by Mr. Morrow, second by Mr. Gilliland. Questions, concerns? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
that's all I got.
Does anybody have anything for Mr. Cutting? All right, you're all set, thank you.
Thank you.
Probation.
Good morning, I have a written report for you, so unless anybody has any questions, I'll jump right back.
Does anybody have any questions for probation? Okay, public defender, Randy Patel.
Good morning, everyone. First item I have to report is actually this week, Wednesday, from 10 to 2 in this room, the Office of Indigent Legal Services is coming to provide training on the new eligibility standards for publicly funded counsel. So I'm attending. My secretary, Kelly, who processes the bulk of the applications, is attending. It's free. I believe it's 2 CLE credits, so any attorney is free to attend, or if you're interested to learn about the new eligibility criteria, it's now statewide. Training's 10 to 2 here in this room. Also, second item is announce that my assistant public defender, Molly Hahn, she left our office, went into private practice. I replaced her. I hired an individual named Dan Tedford. He was a Marine JAG, similar to what I am in the Navy. So right from the military, 4 years as a officer in the Marine Corps. So I remind him on a daily basis that the Marines is part of the Department of the Navy. So I think he's going to be a good fit. I think a few meetings ago we discussed the issues with central arraignment in the push for counsel at first appearance. We talked about needing kind of some data or a study on arraignments and times. So my staff and I, we went through all the 2016 cases and kind of pulled out some data on what towns had the most arraignments, when they are. Basically, it's a 50-50 split. 47% of the arraignments would be after hours, after 5 o'clock and on the weekends, and then the rest happen during daylight hours, but happens, at all the towns and villages throughout the county. But for the stakeholders, I have data that I can share that will kind of show a breakdown of where the cases are, where the arraignments are, and the times that they're happening at. I think finally the state budget that passed, there's, I guess, the Indigent Legal Service folks were still kind of unpacking what was included in that bill. There's some funding or taking over to reimburse counties more for their share of indigent legal service costs. There's also, they're going to include extending some of the aspects of the Harrell Herring settlement statewide. One of them is caseload caps. And the Office of Indigent Legal Services, they're trying to figure out what those caps would be, or what the caseload standards would be. And I mean, the standards that they have now were created back in the 70s, but for us, we're well within the standards. So I don't foresee us having a problem complying with any caseload caps in the future. But other than that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Anybody have anything for Mr. Patel?
Just quick, I was just kind of curious, is it the county's intent then to pursue centralized arraignment as we stand now because of the state? Or is it just something that we're looking at for efficiency?
Well, we're supposed to, when judges arraign a person and they're facing going to jail, there's supposed to be a defense attorney present. It's easier said than done. The legislation that was passed for the state kind of was giving us, or giving counties tools on how to create central arraignment places. It wasn't a mandate to do it. So it's more of, they kind of freed up some of the red tape so we could come up with a plan if we could all agree on something. But agreeing on something is the main point. If there's no agreement, then we just try our best at what we're doing right now, unless something comes from the state in terms of a mandate. But right now, there's no requirement to do anything. We're supposed to be at arraignments, but it's like the boy trying to put fingers in the cracks in the dam. It's an impossible task right now, given our geography.
Okay, but we will continue at least in the review of some possible solution to...
Correct. So the data that I pulled is, trying to move the ball, however, so slightly forward. It's small steps, but we got some data points to discuss instead of just kind of guessing at what the issue is or what the problem is.
Thank you.
No problem.
Anything else? You're going to send that data out to us, Brandon?
Sure, I can email it.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Very interesting. Thank you.
I think the only thing, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, the only thing that really changed under the state budget was that the indigent legal defense was essentially charged with coming up with a plan by the end of this year to institute the Harris settlement statewide, so to speak. Is that correct? They were supposed to have something by the end of this year that would say how all the counties were going to do it. That didn't mean all the counties had to do it. I think it was supposed to be a plan. At least that's what I read. And again, as far as centralized arraignment, I don't anticipate that it's going to work for every county the same way. Obviously we're a much larger county, and centralizing the arraignment process in one location throughout this county would be problematic at best. So the discussion that I've had, both in the magistrates group and with the state itself, is that I see the county as having more of a hybrid system. Honestly, some locations may not need as to travel to a centralized location, and may be sufficient to cover our needs to get an attorney there based upon some other method or way. Again, one of the areas that I'm going to harp on this continually is that I still believe that we could provide attorneys at arraignments if we were allowed to do it as video arraignments. If the attorney themselves could be on video for that defendant. Now that's problematic the way the state language currently is in the law, but from what from my point of view, the state needs to correct that, I think, because I think that's a workable solution that could work for these rural counties, given the number of arraignments that we have in some of these more rural areas. And I got to tell you that, I think most town justices are going to use a fair amount of common sense when it comes to this. If you've got somebody standing in front of you that's committed a very, very serious crime, and you understand that, okay, I don't care if I got to wait 4 hours, I'm going to wait 4 hours for an attorney here because I'm not going to proceed on such a serious case unless, in fact, I do have proper representation for that individual there. So, again, I think these things need to be worked out, but I do, again, from what I can see, the only thing that changed was that the indigent legal services were designated to come up with a plan by the end of the year.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else come in front of the Public Safety Committee? Adjourned.